I'm Emma Stiles. I'm the author of No Country for Girls. I grew up in Western Australia and I write contemporary Australian crime fiction about young women taking on the patriarchy. What is my book about? No Country for Girls is a pacey, high-stakes road trip thriller about two teen girls, Charlie and Nao, who take off along 2,000 kilometres of remote highway in Western Australia. The story has been described as Thelma and Louise meets the tourist, and it's my love letter to road movies, high-octane thrillers, and the West Australian outback. 3 words that describe my book. I would call it propulsive, character-driven, and badass. What does my writing routine look like? I think of myself as someone who has absolutely no discipline and no routine, which cannot possibly be true because I managed to write this whole book and get it published. I'm not an early bird, so I start mid-morning around 10 or 11, and I will go for as long as it takes to get done what I want to get done. I might finish at 4 p.m, I might finish at 10 p.m. I try to write a scene a day, so that's anywhere between 800 and 1,200 words, and I will always try to finish a scene in that day and start the next scene so that the next morning when I come to start, I'm not faced with a blank page. Other than a writer, what would be my dream job? When I was a child, I first of all wanted to be an Olympic 3-day event rider, which I was not a good enough rider to ever be. And also we did not have the resources to make something like that work. So that was never going to happen. I also wanted to be for a while a commercial pilot. And I did in my 20s get my private pilot's license, which was an amazing experience. But I quickly figured out that the pilot's lifestyle wasn't really going to be for me. I think my dream job now would be, if I wasn't writing, would be to learn how to grow something. This is something I know absolutely nothing about, but whether it would be growing food or trees, that just sounds like a really satisfying thing to do that would also have me spending time in nature. In real life, what's my kind of adventure? My kind of adventure, wherever I might go to find it, always involves an encounter in some way with wildlife or wild places. So that moment when you meet a wild creature and you have this moment of taking each other in, whether that's like an urban fox on the street or a bird of prey or a lizard at the side of the highway, I love those moments, and those have probably been the peak, some of the peak experiences in my life. What's the best thing about being a writer? The best part of the writing process is spending time with my characters. So that might seem strange that obviously these characters have come out of my imagination, but they become very real to me. And when I get to a point when I'm really present with them, like I'm really experiencing what they're experiencing as they're experiencing it, and they surprise me with the things that they do, things that happen on the page aren't what I planned, and that is an absolutely magical experience, and I love it when the writing takes off like that. What's the hardest thing about being a writer? The hardest thing has always been that point where when you start a story, you have a vision for it. You can see it on the horizon, you have a feel for how it's going to feel when you get to the end of the story, and then you write the draft, and you might even write a few drafts, and it never lives up to the vision. And I have learned that, first of all, that is just always probably true, and that you have to learn to let go that perhaps what you've created can still be a worthwhile story, even if it doesn't quite match your original vision. What are 3 books that have influenced me and why? The first is this one, Mullumbimby by Melissa Lukashenko. It is a story about a First Nations woman returning to her ancestral country and getting more than she bargained for. And it has some very similar themes to her more recent book, which is called Too Much Lip, and which won the Miles Franklin Award in Australia. Both these books have these strong female leads with very distinctive voices. They're darkly funny, and they are about connecting to country. And those aspects are all things that have influenced my writing in a big way. Another book that has done that is this book by Evie Wyld, All the Birds Singing. I have read this book many times, and it's about a young woman who is running from a traumatic event in her past, and as the book unfolds, we slowly start to understand what that event is. It's set over 2 timelines, partly on a remote island in the UK somewhere, and partly through Western Australia. It's not a road trip, but it does travel through the state. And I love this book because it has an incredible sense of place, which is always important to me in a book. But most of all, it has this remarkable, very original main character called Jake, who is a young woman. She's physically quite strong and imposing, and she's very good at defending herself. And men often comment on her, how masculine she is, and yet she's really vulnerable. And I love the contrast between those 2 things. And that's something that's definitely influenced me in the characters that I create. And third of all, I have to mention Thelma and Louise, although it is not a book, but I have, that's the original movie poster. I have seen this movie so many times, and I have read the script quite a few times. And Thelma and Louise really changed my life. Partly I would never have written No Country for Girls had I not seen that movie in 1991 when it came out. And I felt like the world had changed after seeing that movie. I had never seen women be as funny as those 2 characters are. I had never seen them have such agency, and I'd never seen them fight back in the way that they do in that film. And it honestly stayed with me all of those 30-something years. I also felt, I think, as a young woman, that the world had changed, that suddenly the things that perhaps I thought I could do, or the person I wanted to be, was possible after I saw that movie. What's the best advice someone's ever given me about writing? The best advice anyone has ever given me about writing was on my creative writing course, where I wrote No Country for Girls. One of my tutors quite early on said to me, Emma, under no circumstances should you consider this a young adult novel. So he knew that I had written 3.5 unpublished young adult novels at that stage. And he said to me, this is an adult crime novel, and that's the basis that you need to proceed on. And that was so helpful, because I stopped worrying about who I was writing the book for, apart from writing the book for myself, which was pretty well what I was doing. I was writing the kind of book I most wanted to read. It also just allowed me to let rip. I let rip, and I let these characters tell the story. It was like I took the rein off, and this book is the result of that, which I'm very grateful for. If this is my little Matchbox Holden ute, which I found on eBay 2 weeks before my publication date last July. And I was so thrilled when I found this ute, because although it's not the same model as Daryl's ute and it's not a twin cab, it's exactly the perfect metallic green that his ute is. And it even does have the mag wheels that he put on his ute. So I was absolutely thrilled to find this. And I remember telling my family in Australia through our little WhatsApp group, and my brother making a joke that was like, yes, those utes are so popular at the moment, Em, because of your book coming out in 2 weeks' time. And then I had to admit that I was in fact the only bidder on this ute on eBay, but I'm still very happy to have it. And I've taken it around to a few festivals, and I will do the same thing this summer.